have a question yet.
We know.
Poor guy's got to go back to the...
No. I'll go back to
I have a
this.
question.
I've actually asked
Every
him.
week the parsha has a different name. Like
I bet-
Chi and Vayikash. No, that's one of your questions.
That's one of them. So one of them I did mention yesterday. Someone asked if we can perhaps hear a little bit of the history of the Milwaukee community.
No. He's in Milwaukee.
The Jewish community.
That's true, but I wanted to know, like, the Twerski...
Oh, the dynasty.
The
Right.
dynasty of the Twerskis and how, like,
Well, that should be very.
Bobby Stipler and I think Bubba and Square and the connection. If there are others in mind discussing that,
Background
it would be wonderful.
And how the whole Milwaukee community made Aliyah.
I'd like to discuss that also, actually.
So can you tentatively get, I've asked a question yesterday that get a chance to answer about the Rida of KSY and Mitzrayim, that there's barely any reference in the Pesukim. There's barely any reference in the Pesukim from where they left. They were suddenly like, the Shvatim were down there, and it seemed like everybody was doing just fine, and the next thing you know, giving a Shmos, they're in a whole different place. And there doesn't really seem to be any reference to it, except for a couple of like words that are, Rashi's here and there.
Yeah.
Maybe it says they're spread out.
Let's say that died. Died, that's what it is.
Then that died, Levi, just those few years that Levi was alive, they had in Hashbon. It still seems extraordinary that, like, she just go like that. You think that there's a few kids that so it's basically somebody has seen which is over 100 years, not working.
Look at the Spanish Inquisition, look at Germany. Look how quickly that's playing on its head.
It's incredible.
Look at America. It's time to leave.
They still brew Schlitz in Milwaukee? The beer that made Milwaukee famous?
They got bought out, and I don't think Schlitz is doing anymore.
I remember the slogan.
They used to have, it used to be the beer capital of America. They had Schlitz, and Pabst, and Blatz, and Miller High Life, and there's still a lot of beer stuff there, but I think Schlitz was shut down.
But their slogan was, "It's the beer that made Milwaukee famous."
Yeah. And for a period of time, since my father was the only Hasidic person in all of Wisconsin, he used to say the beard that made Milwaukee famous.
And the beer.
Is Milwaukee organically Hasidic? Meaning that it just grew within, or did other Hasidim eventually come to Milwaukee?
There are no Hasidim in Milwaukee. not included. The community is very much like this community. Not, and we don't have the Israel casualness. In other words, that on any given morning at the davening, the majority of people will be dressed in, like, jackets, hat, white shirt, that kind of stuff.
There's one shul? Or there's a few?
There's really only one show. I mean, we are the Haredi presence in Milwaukee. There's a couple of Chabad places which cater to kind of they have a lot of people who come and are not necessarily from. And there's a modern Orthodox synagogue in one of the suburbs called Glendale. So there's a modern Orthodox, but that's kind of it. That's it. So most of the action is in our show, and in our neighborhood, it's the only. So there's 150 families, and that's it.
Are there heterodox shuls also? Or it's just you guys?
In our neighborhood, there used to be a lot of synagogues in our neighborhood, but they all moved out to to the suburbs, and now it's the only one. There's nothing else there.
Did the boys leave town to go to yeshiva, like to New York or Cleveland?
We have yeshiva.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, so you can go there all the way through, like elementary school,
All
high
the way,
school?
they're going to go through high school and base medrash, the works. And we have a kollel. There is painfully little information in the text itself about the kind of the evolution of the Jewish community in Mitzrayim and what transpired over time that caused the rise in this is really the first time that we have a recorded reference to anti-Semitism. Hava nischak moloi. Paro said we have to strategize against them. That's really the first time that we have any kind of historic reference to the fact that there is a political agenda against Klal Yisrael. So the question is, what happened from the time that Yankov came down and Yosef was in power and they were respected and Mitzrayim looked up to them, and so there are those who say, amongst other things, that at the conclusion of Parshas Vayigash, that there's a kind of a very, as it were, a pregnant phrase, which is, and Yisrael lived in Eretz Mitzrayim, in Eretz Goshen, Vaye'ochazuva. That phrase, Vaye'ochazuva, Rashi says, Loshen Achiza. Not clear what does that mean? Achazuva implies that they took hold of it. It was an achiza, and that. So the Mefarshim say that that's kind of like the critical predicate of what happened to them. What happened to them is that they took possession. They took possession of Eretz Goshen and Mitzrayim. There was a transition here from Logur Ba'aretz Banu. We came here to dwell in the land as Gerim. We are visitors here. This is not where we intend to pitch tent and build our future. So Vayei Chazuva. Now we're here. We're here for good. So that's really where they see where the deterioration began.
Are they faulted for that? For saying, well, this is where we're going to plant. They basically built bar and said we're
That's
staying.
right. You know, the fact that they saw themselves now as kind of as citizens of the land, they took hold of the land.
Can I ask two questions at this juncture? The first one is on this point. It wasn't in the Mitzrim. The Mitzrim had to see them as visitors as opposed to Gerim. Or they had to see them as visitors as opposed to Toshvin, right?
Right.
So it was how the Mitzrim viewed them also, not just how they viewed themselves.
Right.
That was the one question. The other one was your opening. Do we accept then that what Lavan wanted to do to Yaakov, and any time there was someone who wanted to damage the Avos themselves, that was not anti-Semitism. We don't touch it up that way. In other words, anti-Semitism had to be against the nation.
Right. The Lavan's design was to destroy the faith system, the value system. They saw Klal Yisrael as a threat to their way of life, and that's still true today. In other words, in their heart of hearts, the nations of the world know that they cannot escape the testimony that we have from Har Sinai. You know, you can argue with the fact that there's a person who says, I had a prophecy, and this is what God wants. The world has no problem with that. They can dismiss it. It's not a reliable phenomenon. So this guy Smith, who supposedly is the prophet of the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and even Christianity. And Christianity is built upon somebody who's saying, "I am the Son of God," or "I am whatever," and a group of apostles who take him seriously. There's no roots to this thing, and you can dismiss it. You cannot dismiss the testimony of millions of people who have had a prophetic experience and who testify. We experience the fact that there is a creator. We experience the fact that the creator, who is infinite, can and does communicate with finite human beings. We testify and confirm the fact that God has an expectation of mankind, that he holds us responsible for our moral conduct. We can testify that God has an administrative involvement in the affairs of mankind. There's hashgacha pratis, there's providence. All of those things. The moment that you accept the Sinai experience with its massive national prophetic engagement, everybody is there's no longer there's no wiggle room anymore. So now mankind understands, humanity, all of humanity understands that their behavior is under scrutiny and that they are going to be held accountable for their behavior. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to accept that. Hitler, in his Mein Kampf, said, as long as there is one Jewish child remaining in the world, mankind is not safe. Not safe because they gave the world this business about ethical behavior and responsiveness to God. So, I mean, he understood very well. I mean, and that's essentially what Amalek understood very well. So, so there are these two fundamental ways in which you can deal with the Jewish people. You can either try to destroy them, annihilate them in total, which is Amalek and Haman and Hitler, or you can try in some way to assimilate them. So you reach out to them, you open your economy to them, you open your culture to them, essentially you break down all the barriers and hope that in welcoming them they'll surrender they'll surrender their adherence to all of this, this principled behavior. And none of these things work, but when Yaakov Avinu says to Hashem, Hatzileni no miyad ochi miyad Esav, so he repeats the word miyad, Hatzileni no miyad ochi miyad Esav, Hatzileni miyad ochi Esav, or he just say Hatzileni miyad Esav miyad ochi. It's one of them. Why is he? So the Sforim say because what he was saying is Hatzileni miyad ochi miyad Esav. There are two different things. Save me from Esav when he hates me, and save me from Esav when he acts like my brother, when he wants to embrace me. I need to be protected of both of these are a threat to my existence. The Ran in his drasha says that the reason that God orchestrated that Yaakov should take the brachas in a way which was going to anger Esav was because the Rebbeinu Shalom deliberately wanted to set up enmity between Esav and Yaakov and their respective progeny, in order so that even when Klal Yisrael might be willing to kind of to surrender its identity, that Esav would hate them, because Esav's enmity preserves Klal Yisrael's separateness. There's an expression, I think it was Chaim Volozhin said, if we don't make Kiddush, then the nations make Havdalah.
I don't want to justify or elevate anti-Semitism in any way with this question, but it occurred to me sometimes that chosen people. So I think we're better, but we're different. And God expects more from us. Is there a component, like a subconscious in the world, that they're almost an agent of Hashem, that every time we step out of line, whether it's financially or spiritually or whatever it may be, like Bernie Madoff, it was clear that he was a Jew, not just because of his name, but people discussed it. Every time we step out of line, not that there's a noble side to anti-Semitism, but like they keep us in check. For better or for worse, they keep us in check.
Right.
Is there a component of that they do sort of have this job? I mean, there is rabid hatred. Is there more of a sophisticated component where like they do keep us in line?
So I think that's what the Ran is suggesting, that they're. But I think there's a kind of an interesting twist to this. I think there's this expression we said in Tachnun, which is drawn from Nach, which says, why should the nation say, why should they be able to say, where is their God? So why is the word no there? Underneath it all, the nations hate us when we're doing what we're supposed to do, when when we bear testimony, and we make them uncomfortable by our testimony, but they hate us even more when we act like them, and we're still, as it were, Hashem's favorite. That irks them even more than when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. When Balak seeks to engage Bilam to curse the Jews, so he says, it's kind of an interesting. So he says, he sends messengers to Bilam. There's a nation that's come out of Mitzrayim. They've covered the face of the earth. And unfortunately, they said what bothered him. What was he afraid of? Israel had no design against taking anything away from Moab. They weren't allowed to take anything away from Moab. So what was it? What were they? Why?
How much was their number at this point? I mean,
What?
They hadn't started reproducing in sixes at this point.
Oh, they had already. Long. And here in the beginning of Shemos.
Oh, sorry, where are we holding?
No, I wouldn't
Bilam,
do
sorry.
it. Balak.
Supposed to go.
Right. So they're ready. So I'm this is a digression, but there's a medrash over here by Yoga Moav. Medrash says that what they were afraid of is that they saw that in Mitzrayim. This is very funny. They saw in Mitzrayim that Jews became landlords. They were landlords. They were landlords, and that they were kind of in charge of the real estate of
Nothing has
Mitzrayim.
changed, right?
Huh? Nothing has changed.
Wasn't that due to Yosef?
What?
Buying up their farms and what have you during the years of the famine? They had to sell the...
Well, it could be. I don't know if they
food.
were, but they were. He said that they were landlords, and he was afraid that they were going to come in, become the real estate agents. And they're going to take over. It's very strange. Anyway, so Meforshim indicated that what he was really afraid of, what Balak was really afraid of, is that Klal Yisrael's example, the fact that here is this nation that's living, like Bilam eventually had to exclaim, Yisrael, this nation. Look at the way they live. Look at how holy their homes are there. That's. So that was what really threatened him. And he says, he said, please come, curse them. Ulai uchal nakeboy. Maybe I'll be able to. So Rashi has a problem because nakeh means would seem to mean to hit them, to strike them. Rashi says that, and one of his pshatim is that nakeh means to subtract. That's how the word is used, to subtract. So he said, maybe you can subtract. So what does it mean to subtract? So ultimately, Bilam does the job that Balak wanted him to do. What did he do? He gave them this advice: get them to act immorally. Get your young women, your pretty young women. You'll get them in this design. You'll do the. Again, the Targum Yonison makes it very. Again, it's amusing to us. It wasn't amusing at the time, but Targum Yonison says that part of the design was they had elderly women who set up, their things to sell, merchandise to sell, so that the young, the men in Klal Yisrael would come by and then they would say, we have cheaper merchandise inside the tent. You can buy wholesale. Targum Yonison makes it very clear that the the way they got him into the inside of the tent with the pretty girls was to say to them, we can sell you.
If you pay cash.
Huh?
If you pay cash.
Right. So, but what Bilam was trying to do was to make and to satisfy Balak was to say, if we can get Claudius to misbehave, then we're okay, because then they're no longer such a threat to us. Because look, they have a faith in it, and they also don't, they also don't live a moral life. They're also guilty of acting promiscuously or immorally. So in fact, Bilam did meet Balak's objective. They diminished them. They subtracted from Klal Yisrael's integrity, from their reputation. They damaged it, and that's all that Balak really needed. Just okay. And there's nothing that delights the world as much as a headline like Bernie Madoff or this other. They thought this other guy who was married to Hillary Clinton's
Weiner.
Yeah. He turned out he wasn't Jewish, but the period of time there was some. You can if you can showcase.
There's enough news.
Huh?
There's enough news, current news about Eden.
Yeah.
So what's the Lavan Bikesh Lakor Dakol? How's it fit?
There's a lot of really, a lot of good pshatim on what
How does it
Lovin
fit
is
into
trying
what
to
we're
do.
saying in terms of Mitzrayim, the prototype of anti-Semitism? This was
Right. So, but Lovin's design was against the faith. If I can, like Yaakov and let the Jewish people live with their culture, but we need to get them to abandon the faith aspect of it. So if we can get Klal Yisrael to invest their genius in the economy and technology and in the entertainment. The fact is that Hollywood was born out of Jewish genius.
There's a book.
Huh?
There's a book out called How the Jews Made Hollywood.
Right. So American entertainment is built on, and I told you this thing already about the four greatest influences in the 20th century were Marx and Darwin and Einstein and Freud. Three of them were Jewish and one was wrong. So we are a massive impact on the world's whatever you want, and take a look at the technology that's coming out of the Jewish genius in Israel. We're at the forefront of all kinds of technological advances. But that's not our real genius. The fact is that it's a kind of a diversion of our genius. We're not using it where it's supposed to be.
We have to know the ways.
Huh? Right.
Rabbi, one could say that, we never had it so easy in America.
You what?
We never had it so easy in America. Like, we could go in front of a non-Jewish business in New York City with the yarmulke and pay us. And I do it all the time when I go back to America. I have a lot of non-Jewish clients. And there's no problems with Shabbos. They're very respectful. It's the Jews that give you a problem if they're not observant. Every society at some point kicked out the Jews.
Right.
So you can't tell me when it's going to happen. That is, seems to me there's a point in America where we're also going to get pushed out.
Right.
It's hard to see it. And if you look at the left,
Right,
you
no,
can
but
see it a little bit.
yeah, but you can see
It's
this.
such a mass scale, it's hard to see.
And so one thing, the way that some of the Mepharshim say that what Vayemer al Amay, this is Pari says to the nation, Hine Am B'nei Yisrael Rav Ve'otzum Mimenu, the nation of Israel is our Rav, our what? Our many, huh? Numerous. Ve'otzum Mimenu, and stronger than us. So they say that what they were complaining about was they saw that Klal Yisrael was being very successful in everything, and they decided that they were kind of almost they were parasites on the Egyptian economy. They're taking it away from us. Mimenu, they're taking it without Otzum. They're strong Mimenu because they're
So in a sense, we're blood-sucking Jews.
huh?
So in a sense, we're blood-sucking Jews.
Right.
We gravitate towards the industry, we do it better, we take out the resources, and they hate us for it.
Right. So we can't win for losing, and the critical aspect of it that marks the turning point over here is that the moment that somehow we decided that we were going to become comfortable citizens in. And it's not just we live there. We could live there and be strangers there, know that we're strangers there, and then part of the tension is attenuated. It's muted. But the minute that we're there and we're taking control, then this enmity kicks in. The Yachazu is the
Taking over.
yeah.
So the Yachaz what?
Huh?
The Eretz Yachaz the Jews, or the Jews are who's Yachaz the what?
It says at the end of Vayigash. Vayeshu Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim, Eretz Goshen, Vayechazu va, and they took control.
Mentioned in the beginning, as opposed to La Gershom, they were, at the beginning, the Gershom, they were Gerim, they weren't permanent residents. Now, they grabbed a hold of the land. They were permanent. They considered
That's
themselves
when the trouble started.
So could one say that the insularity of some Hasidic communities in America, Williamsburg, KSY, they're trying not to make that same mistake? In other words, like they're not getting involved in, except for local government, they're not getting involved in big government. There may be a couple of people that have to go and like advocate towards the government, with the governor, etc. Sorry?
Endorsed Hillary.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying on a.
And who got released from jail.
There are a couple people that have to go and engage with the governor, perhaps, because of New York, because the Jewish community is very large, and they make us. But are they trying not to? Is part of that lack of integration not to make the same mistake that was made in Mitzrayim? Because if you ask them, they don't really consider themselves American. I have a lot of friends in Satmar and Square, and I speak to them about these things. They were born in America, but they don't consider themselves American, so to speak. If you go to the more modern Orthodox communities, there is more of an integration of society, and I'm an American Jew, etc. But is part of their shita to not make that mistake, or is it really just to stand
I
in
don't
society?
know if it's a conscious.
You mean a Meitzah, the Rice Mangel says, they used to just bribe the Goyen.
There what?
They used to just bribe the Goyen quietly. But it came to World War II, there was an effort to do that with the Shemam. And there was a plan, brand, something like that. And it was killed by Stephen Wise, who got up in Madison Square Garden and
Yeah.
made a big,
Yeah, Stephen Weiss was he really sabotaged the thing.
but he said that his point was that the whole mahalach of dealing with the goyim was a paradigm shift, and Stephen Wise did that.
What do you think?
Fill us non-history buffs in. Fill us non-history buffs in. What does Stephen Wise do?
He got up in St. Madison Square Garden and he cursed out the Nazis who were involved in being bribed this alternate plan with the Jews. And it was published in the New York Times. And Rabbi Michel brings Edus that this fellow had a fit, literally fell down on the floor, had a fit. He said, "He's a weapon." I said, "It's a weapon." So this Shtadlanut was the traditional.
They said that Weiss also thwarted the attempt to get Roosevelt to intervene, and that he was a very strong voice in telling Roosevelt that it wasn't so important.
Not to intervene.
Yeah, he did. And then, of course, Ben Hecht wrote this book called Perfidy. Huh? Incredible. But there he speaks about the perfidy of the Zionist influence on the Nazis were willing to sell Jews for $70 a head.
It was denounced as false, like right after it came out, they said it was like just made up stuff.
It was banned in this country for a
It was
long
banned.
time. It might still be banned, I don't know.
You can get it online if you do.
No, I have it. I have
Or was it
it.
Minamitzer? Maybe I'm confused.
I have it, but you couldn't bring it in here for a while. It was the
But,
ultimate.
so in other words, whatever the details of those stories were, Kodesh Baruch Hu was matzil, Klal, despite our. But I mean, we see this kind of anhada today. In many different walks of life. In Eretz Yisrael, there's one derech to just be quiet and we'll solve the problems, especially politically. Don't make a hoo-ha, otherwise it's going to. And it's part of the rules of the game. You know, say one thing in public, and then just solve the problems in the say-so. And everyone stands up for their principles, and this one will never sit with that one will never, you know. Meantime, they're all talking and the deals are done.
Yeah. But you see how successful the Egyptian openness was, that when Klal Yisrael, when there came time to go out, so you have a chamushim, that only a fifth went out. So they were very numerous. The Jewish presence there had, their population grew exponentially, but when time came for them to go out, only a fifth went out. And I think that if Mashiach were to come today to America, maybe a fifth would go out.
And what would leave?
Huh? Would leave, yeah.
How many Jews returned from Babel?
Right.
Ezra and Nehemiah. I mean, it's a pitiful number.
Right.
We're talking about, when you say that, you're not saying the shame, Shomer Torah mitzvahs. You're saying how many Yidden would actually
Right,
agree
how
to
many
leave
Jews, yeah.
behind.
I even wonder in the frum communities who wouldn't.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like.
There's one opinion that it's not 150th.
Right. So,
98% of people died in Shoshet.
right. We're trying to be charitable.
So you'd rather have to stay here. You can't go back.
I had to go back and see if I can convince him to come.
Is that something you actively do?
What?
Is that something you actively do, or is it?
You know, I've made some pretty serious statements about. I mean, I really do believe that you know, that our presence in America is, you know, we're on notice and we should be paying attention to what's going on. And in general, I think that, you know, that like many cultures before us that thrived and grew and prospered and became very powerful and then went into a serious decline, that America's on that same trajectory. I think that America is going to implode.
Tomorrow, what's the Shiur Shadava?
What?
I mean, I can take it down to the Shiur Shadava of, because it's not financial.
No, it's mostly, when you have, the bottom line is that the success of the success of society in history is really the nucleus of the family. The family is the agency that's transmitted experience, that's transmitted values, that's transmitted culture. Now you have a family system where more than 50% of marriages end in divorce. In the Afro-American community, something like 70% of children are born out of wedlock. It's become a matriarchal society essentially because the men are absent. It's become American society has become essentially has become very exploitive, and there are entire segments of large segments of the population that live on handouts. So there's and then when you have a society that has 1 million plus abortions a year, that's taking lives at the other end of the spectrum because it's either economical and because they're uncomfortable maintaining people at the when they're elderly. So they're pulling the plug on people at the end of life, and you now have a growing number of the homosexuals, the transgender. I mean, you've got a society which is I believe is terminally ill, and I don't think you can turn the clock back anymore. You know, the velocity of the locomotive is out of control. So basically, I think that America's headed for an implosion. It's just not it can't survive. And if we're part of it, then we'll become victims to it because they won't tolerate our presence.
Like a stick in their eye.
Right.
Are these dangers that we now have Orthodox Jews in the White House?
I don't know. Maybe. I didn't get a chance to open up those things yet. I got both of them. I just said. Huh?
What was really eye-opening for me was there was a rabbi who so filled with emotion about the godless of America. It was so impressive.
Goodness of America was the decision.
Yeah, but also nobody put it in the context that America is a great country.
And of course, it's over.
And he has such a car so told. It just especially coming from a person whose background is just really an eye-opener.
Well,
Mentioned
my-
he's been a citizen for 65 years.
Huh? Yeah.
He was naturalized 65 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. The English translation is not completely accurate. You have to sit through it. It's,
There's one with him speaking in English.
huh? Yeah, he's speaking in English.
Speaking
but
in
they
English.
gave at the bottom of the link to the article the tab gives a synopsis of what he says. And it's not completely accurate. So 60
Yatir is not completely accurate. What is your expectation exactly?
Fake news.
It's not Yated, it's a Shiur world news. Yeah. The same species.
You say that the Yated is not accurate. How do they? What do they do? They distort.
Depends on the context. They're a party paper. Pull the party line. So.
The English and the Hebrew, I think, are not exactly. Huh?
Translation issues.
Yeah, that's
No, I think it's different.
No, I'm not puzzling the whole thing. None of these things are puzzled on the I'm just saying you have to. There's news in this.
Well, they have a viewpoint, they have an objective.
According to those papers, when you read about the Gedolim and what the Gedolim is saying, it's a different.
I saw one of the Mefarshim that says, "Vayokom melech chodesh hamitzrayim asher lo yoda es Yosef." A king arose, a new king arose in Egypt that did not know Yosef. So how can you not know Yosef? Yosef was such an imposing figure in Egyptian history, wasn't he? He doesn't know. So he acted like he didn't know. So one of the Mefarshim says that Paro and whatever figuratively represents Paro believed that somehow they had successfully, that the Jews had successfully integrated themselves into the Egyptian culture, that they were, that in fact that they were going to assimilate. So he says that when Yosef died and he left instructions that his body should be carried and buried in Israel, that was like a slap in the face, because it suggested to them, here was this man, look here what he was. He was this glorious figure, and an Egyptian. He was the perfect model. And he wants to be buried in Israel. So he says, he realized that he really didn't know Joseph.
Wow.
Didn't know Joseph. He thought that Joseph was one of theirs. He didn't realize.
Wow.
You can take the Jew out of the country. You can't take the country out of the Jew. You can't take.
Shiur is a Shina.